Some games are so absurd they wrap back around to making sense. Of course you staple squirrels to your wife. Of course your companion is a man who crawls on all fours and sumo grapples a bear. Of course there's a vampire who you cover in a dumpster and slowly watch waddle away. Of course there's a squirrel bro that hunts you in the forest as retribution. Of course you send organic material through a pipe system in your captain's body. Each one of these games makes a bit more sense on repeat, but the tonality varies so heavily from each game you can classify Squirrel Stapler and Gordy and Mouthwashing as weirdo horror. But that doesn't quite explain what really goes on inside of it. In my view, Gordy is about a man hallucinating after he commits murder, but I'm not quite sure how to actively describe it. Squirrel Stapler is about loss and grieving clearly, but it's so abstract about it. The contents of the gameplay more like a dream. Of course every day you wake up, the squirrels get more menacing. Of course squirrel ghosts belligerently attack you once you start murdering them. The main protagonist only has one objective, if you could even call him a protagonist, as he doesn't speak or write or do anything the player doesn't command him to. He's more a vessel to hunt, staple, and craft the coat of squirrels that make the fleshlit abstraction of your wife look less bloody, to look more beautiful. I said Squirrel Stapler is abstract. Gordy is almost disjointed from its messaging. I'm 90% sure the tone of Gordy is a parody of itself, but it takes itself seriously in the same way a movie like The Room does. The unserious nature of the protagonist leads itself to a comedy. 1 minute you're whisked into a mind where evil words transfix themselves to your vision, warning you of Gordy's betrayal and how he's out to get you. The next he whizzes past you in a minecart screaming like an idiot. But there are moments in Gordy where the lack of tonal structure actually adds to this disturbing nature of it. Every morning Gordy brings you a dead animal. It is not explained, it is not elaborated on, it seems to be like a dog or cat bringing a prey enemy, or a pest to their owner. You always toss the dead carcass behind your house in a canyon, but one of the days, the camera moves to the canyon to reveal a massive pile of corpses, distorting the concept of how much time has passed. It's quite jarring. The truth may be that this interaction, this story, is a repeating loop. It may be that the developers thought it would be a good shock value piece, but I can't wrap my head around it. It's because it's not explained. I can only just say that it happened.
What the hell was that?
But Mouthwashing is nothing like these games! You cry. Well, one of the main similarities I can contort into a video essay and pretend it makes sense is the fact that the protagonist of this game, Jambalaya, is not in his right mind, and also grieving for his own crimes. Mouthwashing is so much closer to Squirrel Stapler than Gordy in tone. There's a deep sense of malaise caused by the protagonist's perspective. Spoilers for Mouthwashing in 3, 2, 1. Jimbalingo Dungus is the antagonist, and you watch him unravel as he causes the entire crew to die. This game is very much an obituary for the crimes of a damned crew, all paying for the sins of a monster who thought he was in the right, a man who wanted to take responsibility, and a man who was physically unable to stop him because it was too late for him to do anything, because he missed his chance to actually make a difference. There are many video essays about mouthwashing on the internet, and all of the ones worth watching will tell you about the violence against Anya. Because Anya is the catalyst that Jim uses as an excuse for all of the horrible things he has and does do throughout Mouthwashing. Mouthwashing is filled with heavy symbolism, all pointing towards a poignant truth. Anya's pregnant. Anya's getting close. Anya's going to be a mother. Using basic logic, you can even tell from the dates. In this story, Anya tells Curly not in exact words, but in assuming words. Even if Curly can deny the truth, Anya's still pregnant all the same. The game itself is obsessed with the connection between Anya, pregnancy, and tragedy. If you've listened to the soundtrack, you know how psychotically detail obsessed these devs are. In the track Absolute Travesty, listen to it. Do you hear it? The sound of a heartbeat? The sound of her baby? This game has a tone of tragedy, and don't let whatever Jimmy does distract you from the fact that it is, in fact, an absolute travesty. Squirrel Stapler has a very visceral sound to it, like the gameplay. It's heavy, full. The sound of the hunting rifle is meaty. The sound of flies buzz every time you go near your wife. But the sound of that rifle echoes throughout the valley, for good reason. The game seems to be made out of cardboard and scrap, but they got the sound of the squirrels chittering, the sound of the hunting rifle. Why does this active shooting of Squirrel Stapler feel so good? Why does the sound of the stapling to the wife feel so solid? It grounds the player in this world. At least that's how I see it. Gordy doesn't really have this. Gordy uses its sound design entirely to make the player, laugh? The player character, unlike the one in Squirrel Stapler, talks to a disturbingly annoying degree. The amount of dialogue for this character is psychotic. This is less me talking about a metaphor, and at this point it's absorbing the absurdity of the fact that the main character will just ramble for, I would assume, thousands of years about Midwestern word jumble. But when characters speak in mouthwashing, it feels like there's something you can learn. Every line oozes character personality, from Swansea's exhausted outlook on everything to Jingle Belingle's anger and regret. Taking responsibility for your actions is one of the most difficult things you can do. It's just a brutal truth. How can you look yourself in the eyes after actually knowing and realizing what you've done? At the center of Squirrel Stapler is denial. Denial that wife is dead. The game feeds into it. Your wife gets up, moves around. It's heavily hinted that you brought back a cursed version of her back from wherever she was, but even dead and gone. Her skinned corpse moves around once the game gets going. One can say that the main character is going through hallucinations, but I'm not quite sure. I think maybe in this cursed world he lives in, ritualistic sacrifices to dark gods do exist. Sorry, and I think was too uncommitted there. Of course, in this twisted where you sacrifice squirrels in a stapling ritual, of course it makes sense sacrificial summonings exist. There are papers talking about a cursed reanimation in Squirrel Stapler. Day by day you find them, each one talking about a painter who obsessed over doomed love. Once there was a lonely artist who lived by himself in the woods. Desiring to ease his loneliness, he saved his meager earnings and purchased a fine paintbrush crafted from the hair of a beautiful woman. The artist loved his paintbrush so much that he used it to paint the woman who had given her hair for its creation. As he imagined she must look. He was then informed what due to a terrible mix-up, the hair has actually come from a boar. The artist was inconsolable and spent his days weeping and taking his portrait on long walks in the rain. On one of these walks he encountered an old woman who said, "Ah, young man, I can see the reason for your despair. Come with me." For a few pennies, she said, his treasured painting could be brought to life. The artist was overjoyed, and the spell was cast. Only then did he remember that he had only painted the woman from the waist up. The newly created half-woman screamed and wailed, clawing her way in circles around the room as blood poured from the bottom of her torso and entrails flopped around in tangles. The artist sobbed and looked to the old woman, who was examining the pennies he'd given her. Unfazed, she caught his gaze, shrugged, and said, "I will reserve a special spell for these circumstances." She pointed to an axe mounted on the wall. The artist lifted the axe, tears streaming down his face. The half-woman continued to scream and claw. He brought the axe down. Her left arm rolled across the floor, and she still screamed and writhed. He brought it down again, separating her skull into two parts. And somehow again she still screamed. Again the axe came down, and again, until she screamed no more. The artist's ears rang as he turned to the old woman and said, What is this unspeakable horror you have brought to me? How could I ever escape what has been done here? What penny spell can you conjure to cast good from this? And the old woman examined the bloody mess and said, "Well, young man, this will make a mighty fine stew." And so they made a stew from the remains. But it was poison and they both died. Art will eventually destroy the artist. This story seems more of a warning against obsession, a warning over delusion, over a perfect world. But that's me just pointing at the extremely specific sentence, "Art will destroy the artist." Eventually. And making a funny face at it. But I think the inclusion is a good parallel to the insanity of the protagonist. Silent as they may be, they are delusional enough to think reviving their dead wife with a hellspell and then using squirrels as skin is good. A very sane decision. Sanity is something seldom found in a horror protagonist. Comedically, televised, or in a video game. So Gordy's protagonist being the most normal, sane guy. Why did I put the word comedically? Is a breath of fresh air. It's not like he's better equipped to deal with the story shenanigans, but at least his actions make sense. Again, even if he speaks more words than this video essay, when he's upset, you know he's upset. On the other hand, Jimothalode McJimbeline is losing his sanity. I hesitate to call him sane in the first place. He's more of a sliding graph of unhinged consciousness. One second he's fixing the issues around the ship to seem captain-like. The next he hallucinates a fever dream of a monster Polly that you can see moving towards your mouthwash, which you're trying to use to cover the fact that you roofied Swansea. You're not really helping with Daisuke, you're just guilty, Jim. Eventually he does the unthinkable. Until the fifth day. The fifth day comes and it's different. On the fifth day, it's different. Every day leading up to that day is pretty standard game design. You kill increasingly difficult to spot and deal with squirrels. And deal with more and more annoying squirrels. Like the squirrel bears. Like the squirrel ghosts. Then you head home to the cabin. A place free of squirrels. By your dead wife. Then on the fifth day, as you leave your cabin, the game sends you a message. God is coming. You go about with your day, just as usual, hunting squirrels. It's pretty average. What's so different about today? You head back to the cabin, but, well, you can't get inside. Something's wrong. This is about where I panicked. There's a sound that went viral on TikTok. It comes from this game. It's very ominous. As you start to hear it, as the chorus ramps up, singing the phrase repeatedly like some sort of religious chant. You and me two are just left here squirming as that timer counts down. When that timer gets very low, the chorus, it's really loud in here. It's here. Why is it so loud? The oh so famous countdown sound is here. God is in fact here. You turn around and God is there. A monstrous squirrel head without a body. Once it kills you, the game says, "You win!" And that's it. There's no more fanfare. The game is fully over. Gordy, on the other hand, meanders. There's a lot of going places, backtracking, but not in a hostile, time-wasting way. The game was clearly designed in a limited space of time or scope, but you can clearly tell the developer cares, not about the game itself, mind you, but about the story or concept within the game. The countless voice lines and, or grunt lines of the characters make me laugh in a way few games have. Even the ending is very much a stream of words. After you've assimilated Gordy into your household, if you can call that shack a household, he goes insane. What a twist! You have to find him, and unfortunately, you have to shoot Gordy. The scene plays out rather dramatically, with the weather beating down on you. At the end, you can choose to spare or kill Gordy. Of course, Gordy is my best friend. Why would I kill Gordy? Afterwards, the credits roll, and a traditional end-of-summer-style monologue from the protagonist ensues as he goes back to society, worried all the same for his friend Gordy, worried how it could have been different.
I don't know what got into him. How could he just kill somebody like that? without any remorse. Maybe he was nothing more than just a wild animal, wandering around in the woods aimlessly killing things. I decided to return back to civilization, at the very least to warn the world of the dangers that still lay in those woods.
He breaks down. He goes from a full grasp on reality to what I can only describe as a delirium fueled by the anguish of guilt. What follows is a dreamlike maze of events from a flesh-born baby centipede, which, if I had to guess, represents the cycle of violence between an abuser and the woman he abused. It slithers around, rampaging through the vents, which are omnipresent throughout the ship. Ventilation is one of those things that always exists in vehicles' confined spaces, but it's usually in a horror game used as a safe space or crawl space in media, as a way to contort senses of safety into palpable physicality. I believe that the ventilation being where Jim's hallucinations at the very end are represents how it's been lingering over him the entire time. We can purport that the feelings about Anya's baby, about the situation, are a constant thing, always on Jimmy's mind, even if they're not at the forefront. Jim may hallucinate, but Swansea's mind has been crystal clear this whole time. I believe the second Anya tells Swansea, which is implied, not exactly said, about what Jimmy did, Swansea, feeling as a father, went into protective mode. It's only exemplified by what Anya did to herself. This is a deeply sensitive topic. Anya's entire role in the story is sensitive. She's the victim of many kinds of abuse by her gallant protagonist. There is no world in which anyone should blame her for what she does with the gun so heavily hidden by her. Her story is a tragedy. What disturbs me is how natural Jimmy's actions feel until you think about them. For just like a second, he purports himself to be a savior. He tries to feel in control. He sees himself in that mental image of the graveyard as being on the self-defense, even though he's caused so much pain. He's caused so much suffering. He sees himself as the victim. It's poetic how the themes of the game, violence against women in the workplace, abusers slipping through the cracks, dealing untold damage, the harsh reality of capitalism, they all crumple away in the mind of Jimmy. The only thing that reverberates is the phrase, "Take responsibility." Because at the end of the day, that's just what he wants to do, what he needs to do. It doesn't matter if the responsibility leads to the death of the entire crew. It's just what he needs to do. He needs to shoulder everything. It's his fault. He's a monster, and his distorted view crumbles as he loses control. It's a disservice to the rest of his crewmates. His crewmates are all victims to his loss of control. Anya, Daisuke, Swansea. But just talking about what happens to Anya makes me deeply uncomfortable. And I think that's a good thing. It's definitely a good thing I don't feel comfortable. That sympathy exists in me. But it's not the same discomfort Jimmy feels. It's not a sense of guilt, a loss of control, an abuser losing their grip on their victims. Everything about what happened to Daisuke, to Anya, makes me feel so angry. Both Anya and Daisuke are characters that should have had such long lives. They got so tragically looped into Jimmy's stupid self. Sorry. Jimmy is a classic abuser. He's a kind that endangers others and takes advantage of other people. That uncomfortable laugh was because the subject is very dark. Daisuke, Anya, Swansea, they all suffer because Jimmy wants control. Daisuke gets looped into all of Jimmy's shenanigans because Jimmy wants control and convinces Daisuke that he can get everything to work all fine and dandy. That he can help. It's not a desire for help. Jimmy has a need for control. A need to be responsible. Nobody who wants to help will force somebody to climb into a life-threatening thing. If Jimmy truly wanted to help, he wouldn't have roofied Swansea or forced Daisuke to climb into that vent. Or done the horrible thing that he did to Anya. That even the game acknowledges it. The reality in the game reflects it. The graveyard, the vents, even the mechanics mirror his guilt. That section where you can't look. Everything. The graveyard scene where you have to defend yourself from Swansea, but you're really killing him. The baby in the vents chasing you around to that thing that's constantly fluttering through your minds because of what Jimmy did to Anya. It's all there. It's all bloodily imprinted on his decaying mind, his rapidly decaying mind, to the very last second when he breaks and tries to make amends for all of it. Instead of actually making a difference, actually wanting to truly help, he stuffs Curly into a box, stranded on a forsaken planet alone. These games are all different looks on sanity. Mouthwashing is the heaviest. I don't know how to talk about Gordy without making it comedic, and Squirrel Stapler is inherently absurdist. As I lower Curly into the cryopod, I can't help but wonder, could things have been different? And then reality washes over me. Like a god in a forest, or the insanity of isolation. Reality is often too cruel for happy endings. I just want to say thank you for watching. A couple of things before I finish this video, like more serious notes. Oh, this is a hard video to end because I want to be like, oh, let's be helpful, But anything I say will sound cheap, and I think shilling for myself will sound cheap too, so instead of sounding cheap, I'm just gonna say thank you so much for watching. Please take care of yourselves.